Make him feel the pain of losing you. You do not make someone suffer by wishing it upon them. That is weakness, that is desperation. If you truly want to leave a mark on someone's life, if you truly want them to feel the gravity of your absence, you must become something worth losing. People don't regret what they never valued, and they don't feel the weight of what was never solid. So your task is not to convince anyone of your worth, it is to embody it. To become irreplaceable, not through petty games or manipulation, but through sheer excellence. You must rise. You must evolve beyond the person they took for granted. The best way to make someone feel your loss is not by showing them pain, but by showing them power. The power of a life well lived, a mind well trained, and a soul too strong to break. Do not chase, do not beg, do not linger in spaces where you are no longer honored. Instead, build yourself up so high that they have no choice but to look up to see you, and when they do, they will realize they can never reach you again. This is not about revenge, it is about transcendence. And that, more than any words, any actions, any bitterness, is what will make them feel the true, undeniable, unrelenting pain of losing you. Personal responsibility over victimhood is the foundation of true power. When faced with loss, rejection, or betrayal, the natural reaction is to place blame outwardly, to focus on what someone did to you and how unfair it all is. But here's the truth. Sitting in a state of victimhood does not serve you, it weakens you. It convinces you that your happiness, your peace, your entire sense of worth is dependent on someone else's presence. And that is a lie. You do not need to make him feel pain by force. You do not need to spend your energy plotting revenge, proving a point, or showing him what he lost. Because the very moment you begin to center your actions around his reaction, you are already giving him power. And the entire point is to reclaim that power for yourself. The pain of losing you should not come from your attempts to orchestrate his suffering. It should come from the realization that he can no longer access the person you are becoming. That is how you make him feel the weight of his choices. That is how you make him understand what he has lost. If you have been discarded, undervalued, or taken for granted, the last thing you should do is grovel for validation. Understand that the people who fail to recognize your worth are not your problem. They are merely revealing their own limitations. Your response should not be to plead or prove. It should be to elevate, to take all that energy you might have wasted trying to change his mind and instead redirect it into something infinitely more valuable, yourself. Personal responsibility means refusing to be controlled by external forces. It means acknowledging that while you cannot dictate how others treat you, you have absolute authority over your reaction. You can choose to let this loss define you, make you bitter, and keep you trapped in a cycle of resentment, or you can choose to use it as fuel, a catalyst for your growth, your strength, and your transformation. That choice is entirely yours. Most people react emotionally when they are hurt. They lash out, seek attention, or try to elicit a reaction in some way, and in doing so, they keep themselves bound to the very person they claim to want to move on from. Do not make that mistake. Instead of trying to make him regret leaving, become someone he is forced to regret losing. That distinction is critical, because regret does not come from seeing someone beg for attention. It comes from seeing them flourish in their absence. Think about the people who have left an impact on your life, the ones who linger in your mind, the ones who years later you find yourself wondering about. It is never the ones who stayed in place waiting for validation. It is always the ones who moved forward, who built something, who became something greater than they were before. That is the kind of absence that leaves a mark. That is the kind of loss that stings. Take responsibility, not for his actions, not for his mistakes, but for your response. Build yourself into the kind of person whose absence is felt not because of petty revenge, but because of undeniable transformation. The greatest pain a man can feel is knowing that he had something valuable and let it slip through his fingers. Knowing that he was once part of something extraordinary, but that he can never have access to it again. And the only way to make that happen is to become extraordinary, not for him, not to prove anything, but because that is what you were always meant to be. Mastery of the self is the most powerful tool you have. When you are lost in emotions, when you are overwhelmed by the weight of rejection or betrayal, it is easy to believe that the best way to make him feel your absence is by acting in ways that force a reaction. But that is not strength, that is not control. True mastery comes from understanding that the greatest impact is not made through emotional outbursts, but through disciplined transformation. You do not need to seek revenge. You do not need to chase closure. You simply need to become someone so undeniable, so refined, that your absence naturally becomes a wound. Most people live in reaction. They react to their emotions, to external circumstances, to the way others treat them. They allow the outside world to dictate their mood, their choices, their sense of worth. But that is the difference between those who remain stuck and those who rise above. The ones who master themselves do not act impulsively. They do not let heartbreak dictate their future. Instead, they take that pain and they turn it into something valuable. They use it as fuel. A weak person will look at loss as a reason to spiral. They will drown themselves in self-pity and anger and the desperate need to be seen, heard, acknowledged. A strong person will take that same loss and use it to sharpen themselves. They will redirect their energy towards growth. They will turn every ounce of pain into something productive, something undeniable. And in doing so, they will force the world to take notice. Because nothing is more powerful than someone who refuses to be broken. Mastery of the self means understanding that your emotions are not your identity. You may feel hurt, but you are not weak. You may feel abandoned, but you are not disposable. You may feel like you have lost something, but in reality you have been given an opportunity to rebuild, to redefine yourself, to take the pieces that were shattered and reconstruct them into something stronger, something unbreakable. And that is how you make him feel the pain of losing you, not by lashing out, not by making him see your suffering, but by becoming untouchable. Think of the most powerful people you know, not in terms of wealth or status, but in terms of presence. The ones who walk into a room and command attention, not because they demand it, but because they have earned it. They do not need to chase anyone. They do not need to prove anything. Their very existence, their very level of self-discipline makes them impossible to ignore. That is the level you must strive for. The level where you are so focused on mastering yourself, on refining your mind, your body, your ambitions, that the thought of you becomes impossible to forget. Because here is what most people fail to understand. When you are too available, too willing to prove your worth, you lower your value. The more you try to remind someone of what they lost, the less they feel that loss. It is only when you pull away, when you disappear into your own world of growth and self-improvement, that regret begins to take hold. That is when the weight of losing you becomes unbearable, because people only truly want what they cannot have. You do not need to send messages. You do not need to post reminders of your success. You do not need to stage your happiness for validation. If you are truly growing, truly mastering yourself, it will be felt without effort. The power of your transformation will speak louder than any words ever could, and it will reach him in ways you never expected, not through direct confrontation, but through the undeniable, inescapable reality that he let go of something extraordinary. Self-mastery is not about control over others. It is about control over yourself. It is about recognizing that your energy is sacred, that your time is valuable, that your presence is a privilege. And when you reach that level, when you truly embrace your own worth, you will no longer have to wonder whether he feels the pain of losing you. Because by then you will have become someone he never should have let go. Emotions are chaotic by nature. They push and pull, distort reality, and cloud judgment. When loss hits, the first instinct is often to react, to make him see, make him regret, make him feel. But reaction is not power. Reaction is surrender. It means you are allowing external circumstances to dictate your actions. And the moment you do that, you are no longer in control. You are operating from a place of disorder, of instability, of impulse. And nothing destroys your presence more than the lack of control over yourself. Chaos thrives on weakness. It takes every ounce of uncertainty, every moment of desperation, and turns it against you. If you allow emotions to take charge, you will spiral. You will find yourself making decisions that serve no purpose other than to relieve temporary pain. You will chase validation, over-explain, seek closure in places where there is none, and in doing so, you will become smaller, not larger. That is the mistake most people make. They let the pain dictate their actions, instead of using their actions to dictate what the pain will become. The only way to make someone feel the depth of your absence is to build something greater from it. Pain is energy. It is raw. It is overwhelming, and if left unmanaged, it will consume you. But if harnessed correctly, if directed with precision, it can be the fuel that propels you into a version of yourself that is untouchable. Every moment you spend in regret, in overthinking, in questioning the past is a moment wasted. Wasted on something you cannot change. Wasted on someone who is no longer in front of you. That energy could be used to become more. Bringing order to your life after loss is not about suppression. It is not about pretending you don't feel the pain. It is about containing it. About understanding that emotion without direction is destructive, but emotion with discipline is transformative. This is what separates those who remain stuck from those who rise. The ones who master themselves do not let their pain turn them into victims. They take that chaos and force it into structure. They wake up earlier, they work harder, they push past their limitations, knowing that every action taken in growth is another step toward making their absence unforgettable. Most people do not operate this way. Most people allow themselves to be controlled by their feelings, and in doing so, they make themselves predictable. They send messages in weak moments. They seek comfort in places that have already abandoned them. They act in ways that reinforce their own insignificance. And nothing makes a person less valuable than being predictable. If he expects you to linger, to wait, to still be there in some way, he will never feel your loss. But if you remove yourself completely, if you break the pattern of expected behavior, that is when the absence starts to take shape. That is when the loss is truly felt. A person only regrets what they cannot reach, what they cannot fix, what they cannot control. And the only way to create that kind of absence is through discipline. Through the relentless pursuit of betterment, through the refusal to be affected by the temporary chaos of emotion. This does not mean you do not feel. It means you do not act on feeling alone. You act on purpose, on strategy, on the unwavering knowledge that your value does not decrease just because someone failed to see it. Bringing order to your life is not about showing him you are doing well. It is not about posting, performing, or proving anything. It is about actually doing well. It is about removing the need for validation altogether, because the moment you no longer seek recognition, the moment you no longer crave acknowledgement, that is when your power becomes absolute. That is when the regret begins to settle in. That is when he starts to feel what has been lost, not because you forced it upon him, but because your absence became undeniable. Rebuilding is not about replacing. It is not about distraction, filling a void, or trying to mask pain with temporary pleasures. It is about transformation, about becoming someone whose presence was never dependent on anyone else in the first place. Most people get this wrong. They think moving on means finding something new, proving that they are desired, making it obvious that they are no longer affected. But those who truly rebuild do not concern themselves with appearances. They are not interested in proving a point. They are interested in becoming a point, a force so strong that it speaks for itself. There is a reason people get stuck in cycles of regret and longing. They never allow themselves to fully detach. They keep checking, watching, waiting, convincing themselves that they are moving forward while still being mentally trapped in the past. And the more they do this, the more they weaken themselves. Because real rebuilding is internal, not external. It is not about what he sees, it is about what you become. And what you become is determined by where you place your focus. If your focus is still on him, still on the past, then you are still living in the same chapter. But if your focus shifts to yourself, to your potential, to the opportunities ahead, then you are no longer waiting for validation. You are creating your own worth. Most people do not rebuild, they replace. They jump into distractions, they chase temporary highs, they seek approval from others to make up for what was lost, and in doing they never truly grow, because growth does not happen in avoidance. It happens in confrontation. It happens when you sit with yourself, when you take full responsibility for your emotions, when you own your pain instead of running from it. The ones who become untouchable are the ones who do not fear solitude. They are the ones who use silence as a weapon, who take every ounce of heartbreak and turn it into fuel. Pain is a currency, And how you spend it determines everything. Some waste it on bitterness, on resentment, on seeking revenge or attention, but the ones who understand its value invest it. They put it into discipline, into skill, into becoming so undeniably strong that they no longer need to prove anything to anyone. And that is what makes their absence felt. Because when someone expects you to crumble and instead you rise, that is when the regret becomes real. That is when the weight of losing you starts to sink in. Most people will never experience that kind of transformation because they are too afraid to let go. They cling to the past, to old conversations, to familiar patterns, thinking that somehow if they stay close enough, things will change. But change does not happen in repetition. It happens in separation. It happens when you break free from what no longer serves you, when you step fully into your own power, when you make a choice to build something greater than what was lost. And that choice must be absolute. It cannot be partial, hesitant, or dependent on whether or not he notices. It must be for you and you alone. The ones who truly rebuild do not concern themselves with whether or not they are missed, because they understand that the only way to make someone feel their loss is to no longer care if they do. The ones who reach their highest potential are the ones who stop looking back. They do not waste time wondering what could have been. They do not hold space for someone who let them go. They channel everything into becoming, into evolving, into ensuring that the person who was left behind is nothing compared to the person who is emerging. Rebuilding is not a performance. It is not about pretending to be okay or making it seem like life has improved. It is about actually improving. It is about making choices every single day that contribute to something bigger than the past. It is about reaching a point where the thought of whether or not he regrets leaving is no longer relevant, because by then you will have outgrown the need for that regret altogether. Most people spend their lives blending in. They follow the same patterns, react the same way, seek the same validation, and wonder why they are so easily replaced. If you want to make someone feel your loss, you cannot afford to be ordinary. You cannot afford to be predictable. You cannot afford to be another forgettable experience. The people who leave the deepest marks are the ones who stand apart, the ones who operate on a level so distinct that their absence creates a void that cannot be filled. The world is full of people who seek approval, who mold themselves into what they think others want, who play it safe because they fear rejection. But the ones who are truly unforgettable are the ones who refuse to conform. They are the ones who cultivate their own presence, who sharpen their minds, who build their skills, who develop a life so rich and full that losing access to them is not just painful, it is tragic. Because when someone loses you, they should not just be losing a relationship, they should be losing an entire world, an experience, a force of nature that cannot be replicated. Most people move through life reacting to their circumstances. They wait for opportunities instead of creating them. They seek external validation instead of building internal confidence. They follow the expectations placed upon them instead of defining their own path. And in doing so, they become replaceable, because anyone who can be easily understood, easily categorized, and easily influenced is someone who can be easily forgotten. If you want to make your absence felt, you must become the exception. You must become the kind of person who cannot be replicated. The difference between those who are remembered and those who are forgotten is not luck. It is deliberate action. It is the constant refinement of the self, the relentless pursuit of something greater, the refusal to settle into mediocrity. The people who are impossible to forget are the ones who never stop evolving. They are the ones who take every setback as an opportunity to sharpen themselves, who use every loss as a lesson, who emerge from every hardship as a stronger and more capable version of who they were before. And that is what makes losing them unbearable. It is not about being perfect. It is not about having the most attention, the most admiration, the most success. It is about having substance. People may be attracted to surface level beauty, to temporary excitement, to fleeting pleasure. But what stays with them, what lingers long after the moment has passed, is depth. It is the way you think, the way you move through the world, the way you carry yourself with a quiet confidence that does not need to be announced. Because the ones who are truly unforgettable do not chase recognition, they command it simply by existing in a way that is undeniably rare. If you look around, you will see that most people are driven by the need to be liked. They adjust their personalities to fit in. They say what they think others want to hear. They fear standing alone because solitude feels like failure. But the truth is, the people who are the hardest to forget are the ones who are not afraid to be different. They are the ones who own who they are without apology, who do not seek permission to take up space, who do not wait for others to affirm their worth. And when you reach that level, when you become so solid in yourself that you no longer require validation, you become the kind of person who is impossible to replace. It is easy to seek revenge. It is easy to act out of bitterness, to try to make someone see your worth by force, to spend energy proving a point. But that is the behavior of someone who does not yet realize their own power. The people who are truly missed are the ones who never make it their mission to be missed. They are too busy becoming, too busy growing, building, achieving. And in that process, they create something far more painful than any deliberate attempt to make someone regret their loss. They create an undeniable reality where the person who let them go is forced to watch them rise, knowing they can never have access to them again. When you reach a point where your growth is no longer driven by the need to be seen, where your evolution is not fueled by bitterness but by a relentless pursuit of excellence, that is when your absence becomes undeniable. The people who regret losing someone do not do so because they were reminded. It happens when they realize on their own that they let go of something truly rare. And by then, it is too late. The greatest form of power is not proving your worth to anyone. It is knowing it so deeply that you no longer need to. It is becoming so self-sufficient, so complete within yourself that whether or not someone feels your loss becomes irrelevant. Because by the time they do, you will be far beyond their reach, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and in every aspect of who you have become. That is the kind of absence that cannot be ignored. That is the kind of loss that cannot be undone.